Can you say hard hats, folks? Hard hats, lunch pail, steel toe boots?
Anything short of a championship this year is a failure. Look at this boomer right here.
You've just got so much talent here.
Somebody said we need to apologize for Jalen.
Can I close it, John? What are we apologizing for? What did we say? What did we do?
All right, what's going on, guys? John Zannis, Noah Dalzell here, doing a brief post-game recap of USA defeating Puerto Rico 104-83 in a fairly non-eventful ho-hum affair, which is what was expected, and that doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but it is what it is. USA is finishing as the number 1 overall seed, awaiting their opponent in the quarterfinals, the 8th seed. There's still a few teams that it could be there. I feel like one of the more likely scenarios, Serbia beating South Sudan by more than 3 points, would make Greece that team there in the 8th spot, but there's still other possibilities of who it could be. So we'll have to wait to see who that opponent is. But again, I don't think it necessarily matters. Maybe not until a little bit later. We'll see how that whole bracket breaks down. And this was very much a tune-up today. A little bit of news going in. We'll get into that. Jason Tatum, we'll talk about his performance as well. Saw a few shots go down early and, had a lot of people feeling better about it, and a lot of Celtics Twitter saying, see, he's good, and it's a good day to be a Tatum backer, Celtics fan today. You got a little back here. It had been a rough couple of weeks for Jason Tatum in terms of, the type of online treatment he had been getting. This is a little bit of a boost for that. Celtics injury to talk about. We'll tell you that as well. The show, as always, is brought to you by Game Time, ticket app, ticket marketplace, where you can get the best seats to the best shows or games in town. Lots of Major League Baseball action you can get in on, tons of concerts. I'm going to one tonight. Game Time app, download it, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Let's get into the game. Your initial thoughts. And again, let's just talk about what happened, right? To start, Noah, Drew Holiday, who was announced after last game was going to start, did not start. We saw him roll his ankle a little bit. He stayed in the game, but as you know, with ankles, oftentimes things swell up later that night, the next day. Really no need to play anybody on a balky, ankle. Doesn't appear that it's going to be anything serious. That being said, every Celtics fan is always going to hold their breath when they see an injury to one of their players here. I think we're okay regarding this, but again, hopefully he's not badly hurt, both for Holiday and for his Celtics prospects going forward. But Jason Tatum starts in his place. Steve Kerr abandons that. The easiest thing to do would have been to start Derek White there, but Steve Kerr abandons that 3-guard lineup, and he goes with Tatum alongside Booker to play along with Embiid and LeBron to start. And he definitely got a couple of things going early here, a couple of easy buckets, lay-ins, transition, just to kind of get himself right, where, offensively he hasn't really been doing a ton so far in these games.
Yeah, I thought today was a good win for Team USA. I mean, like you said, this was expected to be a blowout, and it was, despite a slow start. But overall, you saw everybody contribute. I thought that was kind of the most impressive part. It was the ball movement is really unrecognizable to how this team looked a couple of weeks ago at the beginning of exhibition play. Like everybody seems to be way more connected. They were fine getting easy shots, easy looks, layups, open threes. So kind of exactly what you hope to see with that much talent on the roster. And then, as you said, I think Tatum did have his best game of the Olympics, regardless of, how you want to measure it. He still didn't seem to get in like a shooting rhythm. I think the last shot that he took there was like a front rim 3-pointer, never a good sign for a shooter. I think that's kind of like the worst feeling you can have. But overall, I thought he impacted the game well defensively. Obviously rebounded really well, and that's a way that he can continue to impact this team, because rebounding is always going to be a challenge in international basketball with the physicality and with so many great athletes that are used to banging and kind of getting bored. So I thought that was one way he kind of left his imprint on the game, got some points early on. But yeah, I thought he was one of many players that just played well today, and he didn't look, he didn't hunt his own shot, and maybe he would have found a rhythm if he did, maybe he wouldn't have. But lots of times he, made a move where I think if he was on the Celtics, he would have taken it all the way, or crossed up and taken a three, and instead he just passed it to somebody else.
Yeah.
Which I do think there's a healthy balance of that, and everybody's kind of doing that a little bit, increasingly so as we kind of go along here. So yeah, it was a very even team effort outside of Anthony Edwards, who obviously had a phenomenal game and kind of led the way there.
Yeah, and so there's going to be the push and pull in terms of trying to break down a Tatum performance like this one. Everything that he got was relatively easy, not easy. I mean, look, I said, he caused a steal, he got out in transition, he made a dunk, he had a mismatch, and he just bullied somebody, Alvarado, I think, in the paint there to get an easy bucket as well. But everything's right around the rim, a dunk or a layup or the made shots, which is, again, we love dunks and layups. There's nothing wrong with that, but you're waiting to kind of see him cook there. And so this is where it is he just letting the game come to him and everything is natural? Is there a reluctance to kind of go full Tatum and do his little wiggle and his shimmy and his shake and try to break guys down and go to the basket? Because for better or for worse, other people are doing it. And he appears to be one of the few who are not. I think Devin Booker is another one who doesn't appear to be forcing the issue offensively very much. But obviously, AD, Curry, even Embiid today, certainly Edwards, when they see an opening, they're going for it every single time offensively. They're looking for their shot. They're trying to create, much like they would on regular teams. But this isn't a regular team. This is a super team where a forced shot is never a good shot. A shot early in the clock is never a good shot. A walk-up three is never a good shot because you can find people here. There's so many mismatches all over the floor. So some people are doing that, or some people are looking for their game, and Tatum is kind of really letting it come to him. How much of that do you think it's him just being differential in general, his overall personality and the way he views what he should be doing on this team? And how much of it is maybe in the back of his mind still I don't know that this jumper is where I want it to be right now. Because again, the reluctance to shoot, even on the threes that he got, it looks like he doesn't really want to pull it, right now at this moment. Not on this team and not at this moment.
Yeah, I think there's a balance. One of the things that I've been thinking about over the last few weeks as we've been talking about Jason Tatum is how he usually starts games. Like first quarters for him, he's so slow, generally speaking, and he kind of defers to Jaylen Brown. He's talked about it, that he likes to kind of watch it and let the game come to him and feel things out. And how many games did you see this year where he had 2 points or 0 points or he was 0 for 4? I mean, that was a very typical start for him. And you just can't do that with USA basketball when you have that much talent around you. And so I don't know. I mean, I know he was good in the last Olympics and he was a lot more effective scoring wise. But everything we're seeing from him right now, especially as how his career has been the last few years, it seems to kind of make sense. Like he's not a guy that makes 2 for 2 from, if he has 2 open shots, like Derek White's going to hit those 2. Like he's not a guy that needs a lot of rhythm to get going. But Tatum's a rhythm shooter. And I think he just hasn't had the opportunity to find a rhythm. And it kind of reminds me of like when Xavier Tillman was traded to Boston and he was like 0 for 15 for his first threes. And it's like, that's not a shooting struggle when you haven't been able to get in a rhythm. It's like you need to have a bigger sample size to get going, but you're just not going to be able to find that here. And so again, I mean, even Curry today was 3 for 8, and I thought he was going to break out of it and, maybe hit some. So I don't think we just know enough from just watching him here to know if there's cause for concern or if there's anything more to think about, or if it's just the limited sample size and the fact that he's recognizing that, I mean, a lot of those shots that he didn't take today are not good shots. Like we don't love seeing him take the 10 pull-up threes every game. Like that's not necessarily a good shot on the Celtics. It's just even more so accentuated here. And I think he's making the right call a lot of times by passing it up, even though it looks kind of strange to just watch him kind of defer to others like that.
Yeah, because in so many cases, it's like he could do what he wants here, you would think, right? And that's you're dying for opportunities like that. It's like, oh my god, because I mean you're not doubling people on this US team. He's got a matchup every single time he catches the ball. If this were a regular game, this would be like, oh my god, eyes would be popping out of his head and go, go, go. So yeah, it's definitely a different approach, but I think I do believe, you've seen the way the ball has moved here with Team USA for the most part. There really is an emphasis on, getting it, moving it quick, getting it to open people, work for that open shot, exploit mismatches, get into the paint wherever you can. Again, there's just so many different ways this team could beat you. It's almost like they could just
choose every time down the court. I think if Team USA, again, I'm not sure what's going on with the shot, and I do think this is something, there might be a little lab work done afterwards, where there might be some tinkering and tweaking. And you're right, you're not going to work it out in international competition on the fly here if something's bothering him. But I do think if USA decided one quarter, we're going to make Tatum the focal point of this offense here and let him go to work, that he could go to work. I don't think he's forgotten how to do that. So I think, any of the massive overreactions right now are exactly that, overreactions. What's interesting to me is that when Holiday went out, that Tatum was the one who slid in there. Why do you think that is? In terms of his ability. And I think a lot has to do with his overall versatility and ability to play a lot of different ways over someone like Durant. And I know they like that second unit offense there, but the fact that Kerr went to him, it changes the thinking of, he sits game one and you're like, wow, in Kerr's mind, does he kind of sort of think Tatum's the one that doesn't fit here? And then he starts 2 consecutive, including one where he subs in for Holiday, which is not, a straight up swap out type of lineup, and he goes with it anyway. So, it might have people rethinking how Kerr actually feels, or what Kerr feels about Tatum's role on the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's being used as like a connective piece on this team and is more of a role player than a featured player. And so is Drew Holiday. And so he's kind of an easy fit to plug in offensively. And then defensively, he's very versatile, as you said, right? And so, yeah, I mean, he has a history of kind of being in that position, but also, I think they like what they're seeing from Kevin Durant and Anthony Edwards coming off the bench. There's been a consistent scoring spark from those 2 guys. And so I don't think they want to mess up that flow, but also Tatum hasn't really found that much of a flow, so he can be used in a lot of different ways without risking kind of disrupting what he's already been doing. So I don't think there's much of a risk in any direction, but yeah, I thought he looked good with that starting lineup, and they kind of got him going early on, gave him a few easy ones. But I wasn't shocked with the decision, because obviously he made that decision willingly last game too. And I did think it was interesting that Tatum and Embiid played the most minutes of any players today, by a few minutes too. I don't know if that was to like overcompensate for their DNPs, or just, kind of even out the total minutes here played during this Olympic run. But I realized that towards the end of the game.
Tatum and Embiid, top 2 minutes on the team, right?
Yeah, tied for 23 minutes. Nobody else played more than 19.
Yeah. Yeah. And you do wonder. And look, it's not politics, in the sense that, like, you don't have to worry about going back and talking to this guy's agent and having him leave the team because he feels he got shunned by you. But there is a respect factor here where Kerr understands that, like, I hate saying like Tatum was disrespected, but like, it is disrespectful for really sitting any of these guys, considering their stature in this game. I mean, it's not just Tatum, but like, if you opted to just take anybody out and say you're not playing today, it's like, why me? Like, I'm me, it's very, very weird.
Right.
And as you see, it's the second game in a row, and granted one where the score was in hand and they weren't super worried about it, where he did opt to play 11 people, and Halliburton, who didn't get run in the first, did get in the second. So I think Kerr's rethinking that 10-player thing. Things might change in tight games as you get into the elimination round. So I am curious what happens. We will talk a little bit about that, just how you see things going forward. And especially if Holiday returns, what's he going to do here? But he played everybody who was at his disposal today, some minutes. And it's I think a lot of that has to do with, like, I can't just keep sitting this guy, or I definitely think the Tatum and Embiid minutes thing today was a, we got you guys, like you're still in, and they both started and they both played a lot of minutes there. I'm not a shot doctor, Noah, so I'll ask you about it. Anytime you watch Tatum do his thing, I see a lot of people say this, and I see it with my very amateur eye. What seems to be a really, really, really pronounced cock downwards on almost all of his shots in a way that I think is not like it always was. It's like he's really loading up and bringing it down and then bringing it up. I remember somebody tweeted at me during the finals, it looks like an elephant unfurling its trunk sometimes, where there's this big, like, rocking sort of thing. It doesn't look different to you than past years or past whatever, where instead of just the catch and right up, there's a catch and a drop down and a pull up. and there's just something long about it where it just doesn't feel like a quick, natural catch it, snap sort of shot. And I'm sure, people have already looked at this or done side by sides with it, but it definitely feels like there's something there.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look the same that it used to, but it hasn't for a long time too. Like,
right.
I feel
And
like
it went in
this
this year at a decent clip. I mean, he
yeah,
shot 37% from three.
right. But when his summer league clips came around summer league, like, from whatever 7 years ago, I was like, that is a completely different shot. And he looked so much smoother shooting. Obviously, he's a much better player now, but he just looked a lot smoother. The thing for me is, though, it's like it's so hard for us to be able to tell if something is wrong with someone's shot. Also, because some people's shots they just look wrong. Like,
yeah, look at Halliburton.
Right. I mean, so that's why whenever I look at someone's shot, I never want to evaluate like, this looks off to me. It does look off. It looks awkward. The thing that I do always notice, and the thing that I usually feel like I can tell before Tatum even shoots if it's going to go in or not, just based on how much he's hesitating. And he so often, this drives me crazy because basketball players do this all the time. But if you're going to stand there and not decide if you're going to shoot and think about it for even a split second, it rarely goes in. Yeah, it's over. It never goes in. So it's funny.
The second three is a perfect example. He catches that. God, stupid emojis. He catches that clean look. Birthday? No, it's just sometimes when you do these things with the FaceTime cameras, you fly different thingies. I always do it by accident. My favorite one is like the rock and roll lasers here, but let's see if I can get them going. Yeah, that one, the laser show. Yeah, it's an accident. I triggered it a couple times. I'm like, what the hell is going on? That second one is exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. He catches it. That's a catch and shoot right there. You go straight up, and instead he's got to reset and sidestep and take it over and shoot the same shot. But like there was no reason not to. In rhythm, that's a boom, boom, and put it up, and he didn't want to do it. So he's going through a process of resetting himself by taking that extra dribble and doing what he's doing.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not the only player that does it. I mean, NBA players do it. I mean, basketball players just do it all the time. And it's funny because you miss that opportunity the second you're out of rhythm, but he's up there. Like, I don't have an analytics for this, but as far as players that need to be in rhythm to be a good shooter, he's like at the top of the list. I mean, you can see certain games, like that looks like the whole game is shots off. And so, yeah, it does kind of say someone said you got the shooting yips. It does kind of look like the yips, like the way that he's kind of trying to make the determination if he even wants to shoot it, if he's going to drive, he's going to pass. That's the thing that really stands out to me. And you see this a lot with like some summer league players, like some of the G League guys. Like I saw this a lot in Vegas. A lot of players are trying to figure out. So you don't want to see it from a star. And that's the part of the discourse that I will acknowledge. I think is valid because it's been a thing for a while. It was a thing during the playoffs in particular. And it's one of the things where he has to just get out of his own head because clearly he's capable of being a really good shooter. Like that is not a question. But the great shooters are the ones that are able to be out of their own heads like 95% of the time. And he just hasn't been able to consistently be that. And I know people have said like, is it the weightlifting? Is it his trainer? And I think that's just all speculation. We really have no way to know unless someone.
No, everyone thinks they know, but I mean, we don't know. Yeah.
But I know that the mental thing you can really see. And this is not the environment to snap out of it. And nobody's going to snap out of a shooting slump on playing for Team USA right now.
Exactly. You're just going to keep firing. Like Curry's trying, but Curry's Curry. Everyone's certain it's the bulking up thing. I'm not really sure. But yeah, that's exactly what it is with him right now. What you said, you hit it on the head. He's definitely not going to figure it out on the fly, but we might need to dial up Drew and say like, what are we doing here? Is there any concern? Like, this is the downside of this happens a lot. Yeah, you play deep into the NBA season, you go into the finals. Now you're adding Olympics on top of it. The chance for one, you got to rest a little and like just you can't just play basketball all the way through. You will burn out. Two, how much time is there to kind of go back in and make these tweaks, for him if he does need to do something? You don't want to like reinvent your shot entirely coming into the new year, but you also don't want to enter it just kind of doing the same thing and hoping it starts to go in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he has like all the tools at his disposal to improve his shot, all the trainers he could ask for in the world. I know the Celtics shooting, coaching staff has been really great at helping guys out of slumps and improving their shots and things. What he probably needs, and again, this is just speculation, but he probably needs to just take a break for a second because part of it is just like he's been going, you said he's been going nonstop for so long now. He had like a 2-week break before training camp. And so, yeah, it's not enough to really reset. And it could be tired legs. There's a lot of different things that could be at play here. But I think what he really needs is to just get in a good rhythm, and preseason will be good. If, early regular season games that are low stakes, where he can take 20 shots, where he can, kind of get in his bag a little bit. Like, that's helped him out in the past as well. I don't think this is going to be like, he's not going to be a good shooter for the rest of his career. But he's not like an elite 3-point shooter, right? Like, this has been an on and off thing for a while now. And that hasn't, even without that, the Celtics were able to win the championship. So to me, I kind of view it as like, he's a very good player when he's not shooting great. And when he's shooting great, he's like an MVP level player.
Yeah.
And he just hasn't been that, recently.
I use this analogy all the time. But it's like, I do think, people are envisioning, the pre-bubble Tatum and the guy, who's just seemed to be just lethal hitting those step backs. And that's, I think, in people's mind, the true Tatum, right? But also at the same time, they're celebrating the new version of Tatum, which rebounds, plays better defense, makes better reads, quicker decisions, gets downhill a little bit more. And it's possible that, one thing, like if you get the other thing back, he's a top 3 NBA player. If you don't, he's this guy who you're still defending as a top 5-ish type of guy. It just might be different. The question is, does it ever go back to that? As you said, they're not always great shots, but one of the things about a lot of great players currently or throughout NBA, history is the ability to make difficult shots. That's what separates people. That's what you get paid the $300 million for, is that ability to be able to, when the shot clock's down or everybody else is cold or you can't get anything going and you can't rely on your teammates to create their own, you create the offense and you set yourself up to take these tough shots. When they're not falling, he's a lesser version of Tatum or just a different version of Tatum. But in their mind, I think people still think it's there. He can capture that again. Do you think he's morphed into a different style of player now? Or that there's a world in which, he gets that back and he takes his game to a yet another level as, an elite shot creator and shot maker?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see a reason why him getting better across other aspects of basketball has to come at the expense of his shooting, right? Like, that's the thing. And the only reason that could be the case is if the weightlifting actually is the reason for his shooting struggles. And therefore, like, the things that he's gotten better at because he's gotten stronger came at the expense of his shooting. But I don't really think that's the case. I think his game evolved over the last few years as he's kind of hitting the prime of his career, and simultaneously he's dealing with a shooting, more inconsistent shooting. And again, I don't want to overplay it either, because, he had a good shooting season by most accounts. If you look at the regular season numbers, like, they weren't bad.
Yes.
His catch and shoot numbers and things. And I do think that some of the
he's
reasons
still a 60% true shooting guy. Like, I mean, again, right. This is still he was efficient, and he's a volume shooter at 37% from 3 or whatever it was. That final number is good.
Right, exactly. And so I think a lot of why his numbers sometimes aren't the best as far as his 3-point shooting is if you actually go back and look, if he's 2 for 9 from 3 of those were bad shots. And so he really should have been 2 for 6 from 3. Like, that happens a lot where you go back, because there were some games during the playoffs where I was like, how did he manage to shoot poorly? It felt like his shot was on today. And then you go back and you see, and it's like, some of them were like last second heaves or, kind of forced shots at the end of the shot clock, things like that. So I do think his shooting percentage was actually better than the numbers came out to be, because he does take some of those kind of late game shots that weren't necessarily the best, or just like bad shots in general. He has a few of those every game, even if they weren't because of a shot clock. But I think it's going to come back around. I mean, guys hit slumps in their career. This is clearly a longer one, but he has all the tools in the world. He clearly he's going to continue to have a great spacing around him. He's going to continue to get these looks. So I think he's going to snap out of it, and we'll probably go back and realize, this stretch of his career was a downswing as far as his shooting goes. I don't think he's going to become Sam Hauser, but I do think he'll be closer to kind of some of his earlier career numbers from across the, beyond the arc and things like that. And it is really a testament to his game, how effective he's been despite that.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, his regular season numbers
yeah, maybe the years of shooting 42%, 44% from three as he did or whatever as a rookie, I forget what the number was. Maybe those are gone. But yeah, at volume shooting the way he's shooting this year, especially if he continues to get better at going downhill and finishing through contact, and if somewhere in that world, not just we focus so much on the three because it left him completely in the playoffs. I think he shot 27 or 28% for three for the entire playoffs. And it was obviously, poor in the finals as well. If he gets any semblance of a mid-range game back into his repertoire, again, a 3-level scorer who can do everything else he does is fine. It's just whether or not that kind of happens. I do think that the bulk thing is so stupid. Like, this is how people's bodies naturally mature when they get older and they get a little bit more muscle mass. He's not ridiculously large. He's just bigger. He's not a huge person. He's not like, he's just bigger. This is, you fill out when you go from 19 to 27 years old, 26, your body fills out. You get bigger, stronger naturally, even with the weights. He's not too big. I think that's silly. It's not like he showed up and he looks like LeBron right now. He's not that big. I think it's the appropriate amount of weight on his frame if he's going to be able to play the physical type of basketball necessary, given the position that he plays, and if he wants to be effective and do more than just shoot jumpers. So I think that's silly, but we can put a bow on the Tatum stuff. It was definitely good to see him make a positive impact. It's good to see Steve Kerr has confidence in him to start for a second straight game. And it'll hopefully, people are still going to, freak what's going on with the shot and this and that, but it'll quiet and I think lower the temperature on Twitter and on the talk shows and the message boards for a couple of days at least, which is good because it's been a little silly conversation here. We'll talk about the rest of the game and a little bit more about potential opponents real quick. Again, just to remind you, if you download that Game Time app, we mentioned at the top of the show, seats to anywhere. Basically, any show you want to go to, any game you want to go to, MLB is in full swing. The Sox are in full playoff contention here. They're getting healthier, hopefully, and they could be making a playoff run. Tickets are going to be harder to get. So if you want to get in there, download that Game Time app, create an account, use the code CLNS, $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. A lot of great offers here and great features, zone deals, flash deals, great. Look at your seats, a panoramic view from your seats if you check it out. And on top of that, one of the cool things about the Game Time app is the prices get lower as you get closer to game time or to the start of your show. So you want to stay on that, see if you can get in on the action. As I said, go check out the Red Sox here. They are hot and they are, heading, hopefully marching towards their first postseason appearance in a couple of years. Download the app, use that code CLNS, $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Rest of the game here, again, kind of ho-humish. Derek White didn't do a ton coming in, immediately making Derek White-ish sort of impacts, got a steal almost right away, which resulted in Kevin Durant's first missed three of the tournament, but they kept the ball alive, got it back, and Durant nailed one there. So positive play in that regard. And he was just being his regular Derek White self, but not a ton to talk about here. I guess what we'll talk about is going forward. What do you think as they get into these rounds here, that these rotations are going to look like based off of what you're seeing, and who is going to play? Because I do still wonder if things tighten up, what you're going to do here and who's going to sit, if anything, if Kerr's going to go back to that 10 player limit that he, self-imposed limit that he said after game one, or he's just going to kind of wing it and play whatever he feels is right at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really curious to see how these rotations go because there's been so much discussion around minutes so far. And not that these games haven't mattered because obviously they did count and you needed to win them to advance. But a game like today was, you could put Halliburton in there for 10 minutes, yes or no, and it didn't really have it was nothing really on the line here. And so I'm really curious to see how he goes. I do think Tatum's going to be in the rotation, but I don't know that we're going to see minutes this even as we've seen so far. Like today, almost everybody played around 17 minutes or so. I think we're going to see them start leaning on some guys more than others. And I do think that some of the guys that have been playing better, like the Anthony Davises of the world versus Joel Embiid. I think throughout the tournament, he's looked better than Joel Embiid, and early on there was a lot of frustration. Why is Joel Embiid starting over him? I think he's going to start leaning into some of the players that just have been playing better. Like Anthony Edwards probably plays more than 17 minutes if this isn't an elimination game. But there's also a good chance that the Team USA continues to blow teams out. I mean, nothing's been really close so far. And so then it doesn't really matter anymore. What I'm curious about is if it's like a 5-point game with 5 minutes to go, who's on the court? And I honestly, I don't know, because it could go so many different ways. And we've seen so many different lineups that just purely intrigue for me at this point, kind of thinking about what that might look like. And there's certain guys you can assume will be out there, like LeBron. I don't think there's any question, but there's definitely some X factors there.
Yeah, and that's what the thing is. It looks like guys who Kerr is leaning on for sure. LeBron and Durant, I think Edwards has certainly earned his stripes, and Anthony Davis. I would say those are the 4 guys that I think Kerr really is digging right now at this moment. And then I think you could go in any direction. Not saying it would be those 4 in a lineup to close. I think a lot of it has to do with, are you ahead? Are you trying to, keep other teams from scoring? What's the other lineup look like? Would it be stunning to have Holiday and White in a closing lineup because you're trying to really, button up the defense? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. You saw it in that first South Sudan game, right? That's how they closed, and that's how they were able to pull that game off. I believe both of them closed it out there. So yeah, it wouldn't be stunning to see that. And I don't know what Tatum's role is going to be. I'm really very curious. To see how that goes. I'm curious, like if you end up with Embiid and Greece in that first round, who's your Embiid stopper? Are you throwing a bunch of bodies at him and just letting everybody else beat him? Probably, right? They haven't done a ton of that. Huh?
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, all these teams are, the other thing is like every one of these teams calls for different things and has, I feel like it's even more uneven than the NBA, where you might just have one guy where you're really concerned about. Obviously, Jokic or Giannis are going to dominate the game plan if you're facing either Serbia or Greece. And so, certainly we'll see them go bigger, but they have every tool at their disposal as far as addressing those bigger players between Anthony Davis, Bam, and Joel Embiid. So there's no shortage of options. I think that there's certain guys that have stood out more than others. I actually thought Bam didn't do a whole lot today, but I thought that throughout these, how many games has it been? 8 games through, including exhibition games. Like, he's been so impressive to me. Just how he's been able to impact everything defensively, but then also offensively he's really fit in. So yeah, it's kind of a luxury of riches right now that Steve Kerr has, where, you probably can't go wrong, honestly, with a lot of these combinations. And it might just be, he might not even be able to predetermine it. It might be riding kind of who's been playing well that specific game. If someone has the hot hand, like Anthony Edwards did today, I don't think you can turn away from that when he's clearly feeling it like that.
You have done an about face on a couple of guys who you weren't super high on entering the tournament that you revealed to us here on the shows, because when Tatum didn't play the first game, you flat out said, like, I'm not a huge Booker person, and I'm not huge on Edwards either. Have either or both changed your opinion just based on what you're seeing here, or is too small a sample size and you're going to go back to feeling the way you were feeling before?
I mean, I just want to clarify. Like, I'm not.
I'm not saying you hate them.
No. But like, I think when I say I'm not huge on someone, it's like Anthony Edwards and Devin Booker are obviously both great players. They're all stars for a reason. The things that they've done, you can't deny. But I think looking at this roster, like, is Devin Booker someone I really believe in to play the right role and kind of do everything you need to do in such a loaded roster? He was someone that I was like, I'm okay with him being the odd man out. And frankly, like, Devin Booker is up there as far as guys that have really impressed me, because he's totally just played that player role. And I remember actually there was a tweet going around earlier in the year where someone was saying, like, Team USA needs, I think it was after FIBA, after the guys lost last year and they didn't even medal. Someone was saying, like, they need to find stars that are willing to be role players because, like, this isn't working clearly. And then Devin Booker quote tweeted that and said, I'll do it. And it was like a kind of a funny thing because it went pretty viral, and clearly, but honestly, that's what he's been doing. He's been a role player who's obviously actually a star and a franchise player. So he's really impressed me. And then Anthony Edwards, like, his scoring is undeniable. Like today, you can't credit. I have to be fair and give him credit where credit's due for his game today. I just don't like the idea that Team USA has to ride with him. Like if he has it, then they have it. And last year in FIBA, I think it burned them a little bit that they were too reliant on him and that he was too focused on kind of getting his, because this team is so good that no one person's shooting struggles or off night should impact the end result. And so I just don't want to see I don't want to see him become like a ball stopper where now if he's not feeling it, he's like shooting himself back into rhythm and nobody else is doing that because everybody else has the kind of the awareness to not force the issue. And so I think that's why he's like an asterisk with me, but he's obviously when he's hot the way he was today, you can't deny his greatness and just how capable of a scorer he is. He's just his style of play to me, just that type of isolation player is just less appealing. But I mean, if he's effective, he's effective. You can't deny that 73% from the field today, 8 of 9 from 2-point range. So yeah. And it feels like every single game he has one time where he steals the ball from someone just like at the half court mark and then just drives for a fast break. Like you can kind of count on one of those every game.
Yeah. And so that is, you mentioned that, over reliance on Edwards, on past teams. I am curious because we haven't seen it here with the exception of the South Sudan game. Who's your closer in the sense of you need buckets? It ended up being LeBron in that game where they just kept and it wasn't so much that they said go score, but they wanted the ball in his hands to initiate and to determine what was going on here. If you're you need that bucket. If it's a tie game with 12 seconds, 14 seconds to play and you're going to ISO somebody, who are you giving the ball to?
It has to be LeBron.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's confused. Like, just from a basketball fan's perspective, it's confusing to me why he doesn't just drive to the basket more often in games, because it does feel like over the last few years of his career, he's kind of automatic in late game situations. When they need a basket, he can just go get one. I feel like we've seen it countless times. And so there's no shot that I feel more confident in at this point than just him driving to the basket. And because he'll make the right play. If he doesn't have a lane, he'll make the right pass. He's like the guy I probably trust the most to do that. So there's plenty of players that can get downhill and score.
His passing was ridiculous today.
Yeah. So I trust him, and I think that's putting the right pieces out there alongside him that can kind of hit those open shots, of which you have so many options as far as that goes. But I think you give him the ball and let him work from there.
Yeah, and honestly,
maybe he won't even come to it. Yeah, maybe they won't even be in that position. That's also a possibility. Although Canada's look really good, so.
I was always of the opinion that LeBron, at a certain point in his career, it got almost too easy for him to just put his head down and get downhill to the point that it was bored. And it's almost like you're playing like with your younger nephew or something, and you could score at will. So you're like, I'm just going to take some step backs now or try to pass or involve other people. It's like, I almost think he was just like, I could do this, but I don't want to necessarily. I still think he's got it in him. He's just such a force where he can just still get where he wants to go. And you see him do it when he decides to will it. So yeah, but I think just his decision-making and his ability to find people, and that's the difference. Again, I hate making this a referendum about Tatum, but if you're talking about like the type of role that LeBron plays on this team is somewhat like a role that Jason Tatum plays on the Celtics, which is you're giving him the ball and letting him kind of figure it out. And while Tatum got a good bit better at it, you see the level at which LeBron does that, how quickly he makes decisions, the caliber of passes, not just the correct read, but seeing things that aren't always there. He's LeBron, man. I mean, you just tip your cap. It's not saying something negative about somebody to say they're not LeBron, but that's kind of what makes him LeBron. His ability to do that. And he is, you see it on a day like this, the degree of difficulty on some of the passes that he made without even blinking, a left-handed entry from the top of the key with a little bit of English on it to get to the post was an almost impossible pass. And he made it without even thinking, behind the back into the post, going in the other direction. It's silly what he's able to do in his vision and how much control. So yeah, I would probably agree that happens. Is there any team out there right now, Noah, that you mentioned Canada? Is Canada the one? I've seen some people say Germany, perhaps. It seems like one.
Germany.
Yeah,
I mean, those are the two teams that definitely stand out. They both have a significant cohort of NBA players, but above that, they just have continuity, and that they're teams that have the same, basically the same roster every year. And they were in FIBA play last year, whereas the US had a completely different roster, right? So it's going to be an advantage that Germany's rolling back the same team that won gold last year. And Dennis Schroeder looks like he should be an MVP candidate in the NBA the way he's been playing. And so both of those teams to me are probably going to be medal winners. And if USA is not on their game, it's basketball, right? We saw South Sudan almost beat USA just a couple weeks ago. So it can certainly happen. But those are the two that I think have stood out the most, especially watching France versus Germany yesterday. I think France didn't look ready to go against Germany. So that stood out. And then Canada, they have, RJ Barrett's playing great. SGA is running the show there. Dylan Brooks is just a different player when it comes to international play. Canada's weird because Jamal Murray is not a factor. I know we've talked about this before, but it's so bizarre to watch a player who I think is one of the most lethal playoff players and had 2 game winners this playoffs and obviously did what he did last year. And he comes in and it's like he's almost a liability. So that's been super bizarre. But yeah, Canada's super, super fun to watch. Germany's super fun to watch. And then obviously it's just a different playing field for a lot of these guys. They're going to come back in the NBA and they're not going to be what they are right now in Olympic basketball, but they just have the level of confidence when they're the guy that it's pretty remarkable. Oh, you're muted, John.
You mentioned the Murray thing. It's so fascinating to me how ineffective he's been. And, this will make, aggrieved Tatum fans feel a little better. I still think Tatum's 3rd or 4th in terms of of hate being put out there on social media in these Olympic Games so far, well behind Embiid and Jamal Murray right now, well behind those 2 guys. I think most of the Tatum conversation isn't about him having been bad. It's about him, Kerr, not having played him, and Celtics fans getting sensitive, and then people liking to tweak Celtics fans, which I understand. But Murray is catching a lot of flack, and I don't think necessarily he's been playing bad, but I think he's much, much better than what he's shown. I every time I look at the stat line, I'm like, geez, again, it's just abysmal.
Yeah, it's I don't know how much you've watched them, but it's the stat lines looks bad, and then he just looks bad in watching him too. He just doesn't look like he knows his role out there. He looks awkward. His shot's been off. But every interview that he's done, he's been really positive, and he's actually one of the more hostile NBA players when it comes to the media. I haven't been in a presser with him, but just seeing stuff online. But he's been really nice to the Canadian media, and he basically just said, "I don't care about my own role, my own success. I just want to win a medal here." And I think it's easier maybe with Canada because they're not an automatic gold the way that the U.S. team kind of feels. Where if they actually won gold, that would be an enormous thing for them, and they would go down in history as the first team to do it. So yeah, it's still interesting to watch. I find this stuff so fascinating, the translation between NBA players and how well they do, and then who just kind of moves up and just looks completely different in international play. Because RJ Barrett looks like a significantly better player than Jamal Murray. It doesn't even look close.
Crazy.
And I do think strength is a big part of it too. The strong players that can kind of bang really benefit from international play more than the finesse players. And so you kind of look at it, so you kind of look at it and that helps determine things too.
Yeah. Speaking of people who are sometimes combative with the media, when did Kevin Durant become my favorite player? I don't know when that happened. I can't get enough of Kevin Durant. His attitude. I even like the way he goes at people on Twitter now.
I love his Twitter stuff.
I freaking love it. He's not afraid to just call people out. I love how honest it is. I love how he's talking about, the other day he was talking about just what true basketball is, get in transition and just let players figure it out. And that's hooping. It's not about sets and all of these things that people obsess over. And he's just such an assassin out there. I talk about a person who you have supreme confidence in whatever's going to happen once they have the ball in their hand. Durant's that guy for me. It's almost stunning when he misses now. He's so good at what he does. He's just automatic. He loves basketball. And my appreciation for Durant grows and grows and grows. The guy who was a bit of a villain and a public enemy in Boston for a while, both in terms of his role of, luring Kyrie away and also just, his overall persona. I've done a complete 180 on him. So, yeah, and exactly. He gave up. I like this one. He gave up the burners and just embraced the evil. He's like, I'm just going to come at you straight. I love it. And
I love when players clap back on Twitter, because I also think people feel like nobody sees the messages that they're saying. They can just say stuff with no consequence. And the reality is that even famous people with a ton of mentions usually see the stuff that they're being tagged in. And I think it's just funny when they see it and they react right away.
Right away.
Do that.
There's a great moment in Boston sports radio where, and I don't want to out the host because I feel bad, but they were saying a lot of stuff. And I think it was Kurt Schilling, who I'm not a fan of as a human by any means, but at the time the host was saying a bunch of things, and I can say whatever I want. I'm on the radio, and Schilling just calls up and goes right at him. I'm sorry. So yeah, I like that KD holds some people accountable, because we probably do get away with more shit than we should, because we think that they're not going to hear it anyway. I can say whatever. But yeah, you would totally turtle. I'm sure that would happen to me as well if a player or two decided to jump on the Garden Report and call me on my nonsense. And that's fair. I get it. It's fine. It's all good. That's it. I got nothing else. No, anything else you want to add to? We didn't touch on this game. Again, not a ton to look at here.
No, I'll just say I think USA basketball looks a lot better than it did in exhibition play. Like, you can see that guys are starting to gel, and there's a reason why they sign up for the 5 exhibition games, and they go out of their way to do that. And now they're here, and I think they look like a pretty well balanced team, and they figured out a lot of the things that looked a little clunkier early on. Obviously, Puerto Rico is not one of the teams that's going to make you look bad compared to some other teams in the field, but I look forward to seeing some of the better competition, I guess. But yeah, it's been fun to watch, and we'll see how things shake out in the next round.
One of the things I did want to point out about how they're looking, and kind of my final observation through all of this, I would argue, it's again because you have a lot of aggrieved fans upset about what Steve Kerr isn't doing vis-a-vis, their players and the playing time and X, Y, and Z. And yeah, I think the expectation with USA is they're gonna every single rotation is gonna be plus 10 over their opponents. Right. And when it isn't, they're like, look at this combo. I think Steve Kerr has actually coached a master class through these first few games in terms of finding the right combinations and pushing the right buttons here. Again, the expectation is that they are going to win handily over most of these teams. But again, some of these teams have more familiarity with one another. They play more together. There's more continuity. That always kind of comes into play here. It's a different style of basketball the USA has to adapt to. They have to seed a little bit when it comes to that. So it's not as easy as, look at how good the players are. Finding it and making it fit, takes a little bit of work. And I think he's done a good job with it. Even if you're, bummed out that he disrespected Tatum in game 1, I think he's done a really good job so far.
Honestly, the thing with me and coaches, I feel like it's so hard to know if they've done a good job because we see such a sliver of what's actually going on there. Like, I always think about what do the players say, because that's kind of the best angle that we have. And it seems like the players that have spoken, and Kevin Durant in particular, he's really praised him. He said Steve Kerr's done a great job. He keep coming off the bench because what's been working. And so that's as good as we have as far as a look. Maybe one day they'll write a book about how everybody hated Steve Kerr during this playoff run and during this Olympic run, and then we'll be told otherwise. Possible. But for now, I think right now we have every reason to believe that this team is bought in and it's been working, right? And you can't complain when teams are winning by 25, right? That's as good as it can go. They're not going to win by 50. So we'll see how it looks, though. There's going to be a lot more pressure, and things totally change from the pool play round to the actual bracket play. So we'll see how things look. Well, I think that'll be it's kind of almost like regular season and playoffs in a sense. Yeah,
whether it's what the players are saying or just, as I said, is seeing things kind of working a little bit. I think there's good evidence, and you're right. There could be a tell-all book about why they hate him, but also that doesn't mean that they were right. It just means that they're superstars and they wanted it all. They wanted it to be about them, but you're not seeing that right now. And it looks like the egos are fairly balanced. I think it's as much the other players buy-in as it is what the coach is doing there. If you're on a team, and this was very much like the Patriot way, if you've got Tom Brady and these guys, like, dude, it doesn't matter. We're here to win a gold. We're putting ego aside. If you've got LeBron and you've got KD and you've got those guys out there leading the way and leading the charge on that, it's really hard not to follow suit with the rest of the players out there, many of whom are like, hey, I'm every bit as good as these guys, is better. And, Tatum is in that boat, which is, hey, based on accolades, I kind of got it over all of these guys, and you could easily say, like, I don't get it, and he could be making a stink, and he's not, and nobody is. So we'll see how it goes, but that's it. Once again, Team USA closes out group play with a win over Puerto Rico, 104-83. Final game, they await their opponent in the knockout round. I'm not sure we know the schedule yet.
We don't know. I think after this last pool play game, we'll have the full schedule.
So we'll have the schedule. We'll keep doing these with varying with different casts of characters. You may get some international involvement from either Bobby Manning or Jimmy Toscano jumping on from overseas to do a post-game report. That's possible. Both of those guys are in London right now, making their way to Paris shortly. Bobby might actually be there for part of the Olympic run there, which would be very cool, and has access to practice. So he might be reporting on the Olympics in a couple of days on his vacation. We'll pay him for that day. That one's not going to count against him. But that's it. Thanks again to Noah, who's been great here in the coverage, who's following. You can obviously stay with Noah, follow her on Twitter, but also check out all of her written work over on SB Nation. She's writing right now currently about the women's USA basketball while the WNBA is on hiatus. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, 5-on-5 and 3-on-3.
5-on-5, 3-on-3. They play tomorrow, their final game, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
The women play tomorrow. They're also undefeated. They'll probably win it all by a lot. So we'll see though. Yeah.
And if you think, as we said, Curry or Embiid or Murray catching a little bit of flack, check out Diana Taurasi here with her 0 for 15, whatever it was last game. And, Caitlin Clark not being on the team. There's obviously, is that what she shot? Was she 0 for 15 last game?
No, she wasn't. I was just looking to see what you were referring to.
Oh, I thought Taurasi had a brutal game last game.
No, she hasn't been shooting a lot, but she hasn't been. Yeah, she's just.
Oh, okay. I thought Taurasi had a bad game or a 0-point game or something like that.
She might have been a 0-point game, but I don't think she's been kind of more of like a cheerleader, honestly.
Yeah.
But I will say my page views would definitely be higher if Caitlin Clark was playing. I used her by accident in a headline for one article, and it was my most read article since I started the job. So there is interest.
Yeah. So check out Noah's written work there, and she'll be back covering the USA basketball here for CLNS Media on our post-game show as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. Once again, give a shout out to our sponsor, Game Time. Check out the Game Time app. Create an account. Use the code CLNS, $20 off your first purchase if you want to get in and see any games or any shows or any events at all that you can't get tickets to. Check out the Game Time app. Download it today. Take advantage of that special offer. We will see you guys after the next USA basketball game. This one counts for real. This is lose and go home, so there'll be a little bit more pressure there. Should be fun. Thank you guys for joining us on a lovely Saturday afternoon. You could have been doing a lot of things, but you chose to hang out with us, and we do appreciate it. We will see you next time.
Wait, Amit's got an outro for us, I think.
No, he doesn't.
He said he was going to work on an outro.
He had a phenomenal game.
Forfeit's out. I think it's an option.
That did not sound like a chair.
It was a freaking chair. It does sound like a chair.